Good evening. Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. My name is Mariah Almonte. We have a sad note tonight, and I'd like Ken to refer to our director, Joe Finan.
Good evening. Joe Finan, June's husband, was basically one of the founders of our TV show, going back 20 years. He's been in the background, behind the scenes, supporting us all for 20 years. And he passed this week, and we're greatly saddened by it. He was just an exceptional person, never critical, always friendly and loving, and he will be missed. So, on with tonight's show, with sorrow.
We dedicate the show tonight to Joe Finan. And with that, again, I'm Mariah Almonte. Josie Way is my co-host, Ken Demers. And our special guest tonight is Reverend Dr. Barry Fleet, who is writing a book about an issue that I think is prevalent and prominent throughout the world even. In all my travels, I've encountered this, and it's low self-esteem. Reverend Barry, can you tell us what the title of your book is?
The book is titled Your Inherent Magnificence.
Your Inherent Magnificence. And could you tell us a little bit about what the book is about?
Well, it's about helping people to understand and to know that each one of us is inherently magnificent. Mm-hmm. We come into the world with this core, but as we go through life, a variety of experiences, we get hurt, things happen, needs don't get met, and we build up layers of protection. Mm. And underneath each layer of protection is a fear of being hurt that way again. Mm-hmm. I think of it like a callus on our hand. We get hurt there, and our body protects it so that spot at least won't get hurt. And then what happens as we grow through life, what we present to the world mm-hmm. is our lifetime accumulation of protections.
Armor.
Armor, exactly. And what has been lost, sometimes to my own consciousness, is that I have lost touch with the fact that in me is an inherent magnificence. Mm. And so what I present to the world is protection instead of my inherent magnificence. And what I react to in others is their protections instead of their inherent magnificence. Yeah. So the book is about, one, helping us claim who we really are and getting in touch with the courage to be who we are without fear.
Where did you first, I guess I didn't mention that you're a psychologist besides a reverend.
Right.
And you also teach at the Bryant University.
Right.
And you combine psychology with spirituality.
With theology.
And with theology.
So one of the things that fascinates me is where psychology and theology intersect.
Overlap, yes.
Think about a Venn diagram. Mm. And wow. that's where I get my energy.
That's really very amazing.
Okay.
Not many people do that, that are able to process both. I studied holistic counseling, and I know my weaknesses and strengths from it, and it's very hard to process both and walk with 2 feet on the ground.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Process the spirituality and...
Their innate spirituality, their innate divineness, the specialness about every single person. In my head, I know it, but when I come in contact with other people, I can't always live it. Mm-hmm. It disappears from my mind.
Why do you think that happens?
I think the way society has raised us, and I think that we're people who tend to react instead of respond. And so somebody presents us with whatever set of behaviors, and I immediately react to that. And again, I'm reacting to all of their layers of protection instead of being able to look past that and see that divine being that's underneath all those layers.
Well, one thing that works for me sometimes is when I'm in crowds, and I don't like crowds, I look and I say, so many faces of God are around me.
Yeah.
Every one of these is a face of God. And that makes a difference for me. But I think everybody has to learn what makes a difference, and to learn when they're uptight, that it's their issue, not the person over there.
Right.
I mean, yes, it's their armor to some extent that you're reacting to, or you're reacting because they remind you of someone who hurt you in some way. And you don't need to react to someone who's a stranger in a negative way, because they might be wonderful people.
They are wonderful people. They're just not acting that way right now.
And sometimes what we hold true for ourselves is a false truth, that we're seeing someone's behavior as a negative or as animosity toward us, when actually, if I'm correct, Barry, if we change our mind, then that person responds differently to us also.
Sure, we respond to the way we're treated. And if somebody is angry with me, it's real easy to be angry with them. But if they're angry with me and I am grounded enough, have 2 feet on the ground, and can respond to them with kindness, their anger can begin to melt, because they don't need to protect themselves from me once I respond with kindness, with love.
How can I go through my life being grounded? How can I start? What does your book indicate to people how they can be grounded in themselves? This inner magnificence is this grounding, recognizing who we truly are.
It is. And what I want to establish is, first, the intellectual knowing. I have to know that it's true, and then I have to start looking for it.
And come to believe it.
Right.
More and more. That what I'm thinking is really very true. And if it's true about me, it's true about you.
Right.
Okay. Generally speaking, if we have a well-to-do family who have children, those children are brought up knowing that they're empowered, that they can do these things. If we have a middle class, or to the other extreme, a low-income people, these folks, their children, don't think they have a way out. They don't have the self-confidence that the other side does. Not because they're not capable of it, but just because they're not brought up with it. It's been taught to them that, the world's against. The question I have is, how do we get people that haven't been brought up with this sense of self-confidence to use it, so that they have what you're talking about, bring that spark of divinity forward?
It only takes one person. And if there's one person in their life that sees that magnificence in them and relates to that magnificence,
treats them with kindness and whatever else?
Whatever else. Carl Rogers talked about unconditional positive regard. He talked about genuineness, so the other person being who they are, so that this child from a less privileged background has a chance to relate to somebody that is genuine with them, isn't acting out of a role, isn't acting out of a posture, is just their own magnificent
It's there for them.
person, and who has accurate, empathic understanding, so that I let them know that I really do understand. I can communicate to them that they are understood.
So that these movies that every so often they come out with, there's some band leader in a hard-pressed school or some coach that takes these kids and is with them on an emotional level.
Right.
This has a bearing on
Yes.
that group and maybe
Absolutely.
on the whole school.
Absolutely.
And this is what's
Absolutely.
needed to bring
Absolutely.
them out by the bootstraps.
I have to respond to something you said. Just because someone comes from a less wealthy family does not mean they didn't get a lot of nurturing. Mother Teresa's family was relatively poor, but they shared everything that they had with others, and she learned to be very generous and loving because the family was very loving, even though they didn't have much.
That's a different culture.
It's
That's a
still,
way of life over there.
it's still, and there are some children of wealthy parents where they get shipped off to schools and there's very little contact with them and support.
But they're reinforced that they can do it, whereas the poorer folks, the middle class folks, they have to be special to understand that they can do it because nobody tells them. This is what you're saying, that what we got to do is promote big brothers and big sisters and
There has to be a presence from
pick
someplace.
somebody and go
And
nurture them.
And it can be a teacher, it can be a friend, it can be a stranger that connects with them. It can happen in church, it can happen,
Could be a movie, couldn't it? Like Rocky.
Or pay it forward.
or pay it forward.
Right.
But I think that we need an experience with another human being that sees it in us and that fans the flame, that nurtures that spark that's there. Because the other side of it is, we know who the people were that helped throw water on the spark. I was talking to a student not long ago who said, I'm just not a good student. And I said, who taught you that? And he gave me a name just like that in second grade.
A teacher.
A teacher.
And she probably said it as a casual passing.
It's hard to know, but it's clear how he heard it.
It was imprinted on him.
And he believed that, and he took that. That's the false belief that you were talking about. He took that, and he had, up to this point, he spent the rest of his life with that self-image. And I was able to sit with him and I say, you're not, I mean, I listened to you in class, you ask good questions. I know that you're not, you're a good student. So we have to figure out how to
Work
make
on
the
that.
connection there.
Make that disappear. When they've been brought up with no self-confidence, I guess, is that a safe way to say it?
Sure.
How do you turn that around? I mean, that's very ingrained in people, right?
No, nobody is absolutely good at nothing. You can find the things that are positive and good about them.
Oh, I understand
Everybody
that.
has that. And you start by emphasizing all of the positive things.
When I was working in the construction trade, there was a saying that not all the foremen, but good foremen would say, we have to find a job where he looks good for that individual. Because not everybody was equal.
Not
Good
everything's
at
a good fit.
everything.
Yeah, I mean, some guys do anything you want.
Right.
Other guys, you have to make them look good.
Right.
So the key is to find a young person and let them succeed at something. It's even a small
that's
thing.
part of it, but it's more than doing. It's more about being.
Feeling it.
And once I am convinced that I have potential, then the doing will take care of itself. It may be that part part of me connecting with that in me is somebody with the wisdom to connect me with a job that is a good fit. And then after all of these failures, all of a sudden I do find something that lights my fire. And that can start that process.
I find it amazing having this conversation. I just thought of it. Last night, over my daughter's house, my 10-year-old grandson is saying to me, or saying to everybody there, he's all upset because his math teacher doesn't like him.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, I'm trying to draw him out and say, okay, why? I mean, maybe she's being special with you. And it's such a subtle thing for a child. What is it they say, that up until a child is 6 years old, anything their parents say is automatically believed to be 100% correct?
Pretty much.
Kind of like that,
Yeah.
I mean, on a certain level. So that if we've brought them forward with certain truths, right or wrong, isn't that very, very difficult to change? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not my field.
It is difficult, but it's very possible. It's very doable. And that's what excites me, is that, yes, we've had those bad experiences, but that doesn't have to define us. We allow them to define us up to a point, but with an exposure to an environment that allows us to become who we really are, we can. An acorn. An acorn has in it everything it needs to know to become a magnificent oak tree. What's going to determine whether or not that acorn becomes a magnificent oak tree or not is the environment. And the environment means the kind of nutrients that are available to it in the soil. It means the kind of moisture that's available. It means the kind of light that's available. And it means the kind of space that's available. Because if that oak tree grows up on the edge of the forest, it's going to be half an oak tree. It's going to have branches on the open side, but on the side where there's not room, its growth is going to be stunted. The nice thing about people is we can move them out a little bit, and whatever we can move them away from what the force that was stunting their growth, and allow the rest of them to blossom, so their full magnificence comes out. But there has to be an environment that says it's okay to experiment with that. It's okay to think about, maybe I could do this. Maybe this is who I am. And I don't have to hold in and protect myself.
Is anything in our public school system geared to doing this with children?
I don't know of a systematic program to do that.
There are some schools that have hired outside professionals to bring in programs for the students. April, Sharon was doing some work in schools.
One of the mediums, one of the psychics, she's probably the best in Eastern United States. She would go into New York City schools and teach the children how to meditate at the beginning of a class. And I knew other people that did it down in your neck of the woods, down in Little Compton. And by teaching them meditation, and they would do it each class time, it would have a significant impact on the behavior of the kids and their degree of being able to pay attention to whatever the teacher was teaching that day.
Absolutely.
In one case, the woman down in Little Compton said she was teaching in a Newport school, which was very poor in that, and she did this meditation stuff, and she was kind of afraid to tell the administration.
Administrators.
The principal came in, she says, I don't know what you're doing with these kids, but keep doing it.
Yeah.
So that there's a certain level, but I don't know how that meditation ties into the self-confidence or just connecting to the inner divinity of yourself.
It does. The meditation allows me to just stop all of the external input and just focus and center and quiet myself. And when I do that, then I begin to get connected with a different kind of energy.
Yeah.
So once I meditate, once I stop and I meditate and I'm quiet, then energy starts coming out, as opposed to me bouncing off of all the energy that's already there in the busyness.
Just within the last 3 or 4 days, I read something in the Providence Journal about they're trying all kinds of different programs to stimulate kids to try and stay in school, you know, telling them that, okay, if you do this, we'll pay for you to go to college. And they found it was cheaper in the long run to offer them these programs that would lead to the incentives to pay, I think it was Oregon, to pay for their college. And they're trying all these different programs because it's costing so much for these uninspired children, is that the best way to put it?
That's a good way to put it.
To drop out, and the cost to society was much less when they paid for them to go to college.
Sure, because then they become a contributing member of society instead of in that marginal group that society needs to take care of.
Well, I work with a lot of people that need help. And the way society helps isn't complete. It helps to a point, and people can't get on their feet yet, and they stop.
Right.
And they're trapped. They can't get out of the repetitive cycle generation to generation because they just can't afford to get out.
What do you mean they can't afford?
To get a better job.
Yeah, if they get a better job with higher pay, they lose whatever assistance and help that they're getting, and they actually wind up having, let's say, $150 a week less income. Most people can't do that.
Right.
Or $150 or $200 a week less. They can't afford to do that, so they can't advance. And it's very, very frustrating to see that.
So that sounds like a government problem.
That's an issue with the way we have set up and defined helping people. And we haven't built in
keeping
the
them
kind
down.
of incentives.
I believe in teaching someone how to fish, not giving them fish.
Right.
Right.
You know, and that's not the
You think
systems
that's
that
something that's
government
going to change?
supports. I don't know.
Well, that's like another distraction to becoming whole. Like we were talking earlier, Barry, about distractions to wholeness
Yeah.
and to our divine inheritance. And how that actually, what are the distractions that you think?
Well, the
Distractions
fears.
for us recognizing who we are. There's the TV programs.
Oh, would that tell you what you're supposed to be?
Or show us the wrong way. Go ahead, Barry.
No, but I think I had a discussion with some students earlier this afternoon about the way in which television is a distraction from me connecting with myself. It's a distraction from me connecting with real people, having real relationships. And so
Real feelings.
for me to become or to connect with that magnificence in me, it comes from real relationships. And it comes from healthy relationships.
The interaction of people.
Instead of the distractions and the way in which lots of technology serves to create distance in personal relationships and personal contact.
Well, the world is growing smaller. We're much more aware that we are all interconnected because of some types of technology, but it does distance us. People are, instead of going over to see each other, they're texting.
Right.
Well, I remember back, and I'm sure you guys do, the TV used to be called the boob tube because it suppresses
Creativity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to answer your question, I think anything that gets in the way of creativity, that suppresses creativity, doesn't serve us well.
And suppresses personal expression, not just creative expression, but being able to speak your truth, so long as you're not hurting somebody in speaking your truth. But being able to speak without being censored and criticized is essential, and being accepted, even if we say something, like, I really don't like such and such politician or such and such religion or whatever. Whatever we say should be allowed a voice. And you might want to say, well, why do you feel that way?
Right. Then
Right.
then
Instead of saying,
discuss
I
it.
can't talk to you if you believe that.
Right.
And that's the difference between relating to the words and being in an environment where it's not acceptable for me to be me. I have to be what you want me to be in your presence. And as we become the kind of people that allow others to be who they are, it sort of sets off
It's a
a
chain
different energy
reaction.
level. It is.
If we allow people to be who they are, then that energy is going to reverberate back to us, and we will be allowed to be who we are.
I think it goes the other way, but it does build on itself, but I think it has to start with me. I have to be comfortable with who I am in order for me to allow you to be who you are in my presence.
Does
And-
watching too much television stop us from becoming what we're capable of becoming? Because we're not interacting, all we're doing is sitting there watching, and I find there to be some very stupid stuff on the TV. But there's no interaction. You're just, and if you would be doing something creative, it's very easy to turn the TV on and not do anything.
It is.
I'm a classic case.
You and me too.
Yeah,
I'd like to say something about Facebook, too. Everybody raves about Facebook, and it's like, are you on it? It's one of the hot topics. But I think that like a good old phone call or a visit or that personal, I require that. And that way I release who I am in my own way also, rather than be invaded. We have less than 3 minutes left. And is there anything you'd like to get across to the audience about helping either themselves or others on this topic?
Well, one, I'd like everybody to know the truth about themselves. And I'd like everybody to know the truth about everybody else. And I would like for parents to know the truth about their children. And to treat the children with the magnificence that they are, instead of trying to make them into what we think they should be, or trying to make them fit into the mold that our family requires. So those are the things that I want people to know. But it starts with each individual knowing that we are inherently magnificent.
But one of that, I agree with what you're saying, but the problem is, I think, most people don't know what they are and don't know what their children really are, so how can they teach it to their children if they don't know themselves?
That's a challenge. And so, again,
they need someone to tell them.
That's why the book,
That's why the book.
We
That's
have
why
to
the
break
book.
the cycle, huh?
Yeah.
that each individual is well, why are we magnificent then? We have probably another minute and a half. We're magnificent because we are endowed by our Creator.
Right.
One of the first steps, I think, is helping people to express themselves, to be assertive, and after they realize they're accepted by people, I think they blossom more.
Absolutely.
May I say that? That is magnificent. Now we have less than 1 minute. Magnificent no matter what shape or size or color or any type of affinity whatsoever. And now we have to wrap up the show. Okay. I want to thank Reverend Barry Fleet for being on the show. Thank you, Josie. Thank you. Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight, and thank you for viewing us. See you again soon.
Ta-da.